All right. Thank you so much for joining me to talk about your music, and your journey as a composer today.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to speak with you today.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I wanted to ask, could you share a little bit about who you are and how you became to compose so many different works?
I was born in former Yugoslavia, and I started playing piano as a kid. I was 4 or 5 years when my parents bought piano for me, and it was too early to start studying. So I did a lot of I was self-taught, and I did a lot of improvisation, which then turned to be really great for becoming a composer because my creative side was very early supported by the fact that I had to find ways to teach myself. Private schools were not really a big part of education in the country where I was born and where I grew up. Now it's a different story. Now kids start very early. But back then, we had state music schools. So as soon as I turned 7, I was enrolled in a state music school. So I went to 2 parallel schools, regular one and the music school, and that's how I got the music education very early. Uh, and then I went to music high school and studied composition at the University of Novi Sad, which is now in Serbia. In the meantime, uh, a civil war broke out in the country where I'm from, so that name doesn't exist anymore. It's several smaller countries instead now. So in the 90s, I was accepted to the San Francisco Conservatory, and I did my master's there. And then I went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the University of Michigan, where I did my doctoral program. And then I moved to New York City. So for last 20 plus years, New York City has been my base. And in recent years, I've been spending more time in my home country as well.
Oh, beautiful. I live in New Jersey, so we're quite close. Well,
Yes.
that's a very inspiring journey, and I was looking at your website, which I really loved. It was so beautiful. I loved it. And I was just wondering, you wrote over 100 pieces. I was so shocked. And I wanted to ask, where do you get so much creativity and inspiration to write over 100 pieces?
Well, I think you're just right, and then over time it happens by itself.
Hmm.
And um, I think that's really it. If your work is your main activity, and for most of us creative people, that's exactly how it is.
Hmm.
Everything else tends to be a little bit in the background. Then you go from one work to another. You work with people that you really like and enjoy spending time with. And then one work calls for another one, relationships deepen and develop. And, you turn around and, there is 100 of works being done.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. And um you said you moved for your master's to America, right? And so do you feel like your compositions sort of changed from the beginning of your career when you were in Yugoslavia versus now?
Yes, very much so. Where I got my basic primary education, the system was much more rigid in a good way and in a bad way. In a good way, there was a methodology of learning music where you really had to develop skills and musicianship, and learn how to do it the way old masters would do it.
Mm.
So I grew up with a very solid education in harmony, counterpoint, musical forms. We had a course that was called the structural analysis of a musical work, where in one course basically there were all disciplines joined. So and that was beautiful because I felt I learned a lot of things really to the bottom of the theory of music music and, you know, what we need to know as composers. But then coming to the States, there was a sense of liberation for me. I moved to San Francisco first, and it was really beautiful how, in a way, nobody cared for those rules. Like
Mhm.
of course you could apply them, but nobody wanted you to write a fugue or to write in sonata form or any of those things that I think for the beginning and for the initial level of education, they were crucial. But later on, it was really beautiful and liberating not to think about them, but only to use the knowledge about proportion, how harmony works, and then with that knowledge create something that's completely free. So yes, I mean that's a really great question, because everything changed when I moved to the States. My approach to creativity changed because I felt my approach to work was so much freer.
Mm. And do you feel like there's like a certain landmark piece that kind of showed that change?
Well, the first piece that I wrote in the States was my string quartet #1.
Mm.
And even there, my teacher at the San Francisco Conservatory was Eleanor Armour, and she still teaches there. She is an amazing teacher. And I remember in one section, I wanted to write an octave drone, just cello and viola, to hold for a really long time that drone. And I came to my lesson with her and I told her, you know, this drone would be so great, but these octaves are too simple to do. And I don't think I should have an octave. Should I have a seventh? And she said, who said that octave drones are too simple?
Mhm.
So just a simple question like that put everything else in a really healthy perspective.
Mm.
So um, so I wrote a drone, and uh, many other small things changed. But then, step by step, many big things also changed, just thanks to the new environment and thanks to a great teacher. Great mentors are our greatest blessing, I would say.
Mm. Yes, I agree. And now I saw and also on your website that you got personal experiences. Oh, you got inspiration from personal experiences like living through the war, like you said. And also you explored like this kind of theme of identity and place. And I'm really interested in that because as a child I also moved around a lot in a lot of different countries for my parents' work. And so I'm always trying to explore those kind of themes in my playing as well. So can you tell me a little bit about like how you incorporate that into your compositions?
Well, you can relate to the feeling because whenever you change the place, you develop another layer, another you develop the ability to connect in a very quick way, and also to understand the space, the place, very quickly, because this is like a survival strategy and technique. You have to, in order to survive, you have to adapt quickly.
Yeah.
And I think in music writing, what I found is that uh, I do understand the environment, but also the new environment. But I realize it for myself. It's very important um, to really understand the roots. What is the music and the sound that is almost intrinsic to me? Intrinsic, not in some philosophical sense, like the sound that we all carry in us, but really sound that I remember from the voices of people from my childhood or the songs from my childhood. Sounds that were built into the system of emotions as I was developing as a person or as a child.
Mm.
And realizing those sounds and what they mean to me and how I react to them, I started to incorporate them more in the music that I write wherever I am. And of course, whatever influences me in these new places, I welcome it all. You know, there is no, um, it has to be, we have to be very porous when it comes to uh, belonging to new places, because the only way to really feel alive and to feel safe is to take in as much as we can. But that deep thing that's so known to us, I think in my case that was um, that is the line in a way that keeps me very stable and free to move around and incorporate as many things, because that core is very strong and strong for me, and I recognize it. I
Yes.
don't know whether that's your experience too, whether you relate to that. I know that you relate to the experience, but I'm also curious to know how you solve it through your work.
Well, so are you asking it how I saw your
Yes,
work
yes,
in my opinion? Well,
yes.
when I first heard My Desert, My Rose,
No, I
I
meant for you. I wasn't asking about my work. I was asking
oh
how you managed to do it in your life.
oh I completely agree with what you said about the sound, like the kind of emotions that you remember, like trying to put that into my music, like because when I was young, but I didn't have those kind of changing, shifting experiences. So my music, my playing was very, it didn't have a lot of like different dimensions and colors and sounds. But then I think when I was 14 and I was playing the Sibelius Violin Concerto for the first time, that piece has a lot of it's like a easel for an artist, because you can do so much with it with the emotions and the kind of colors and sounds. And I felt like um it's in like the second movement I would make these kind of colors and sounds that will kind of come from like feeling kind of lonely maybe after moving to a new place, or like these kind of emotions that I remembered, and I could put that directly into my sound. And I felt like a lot of people could tell that as well. And yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so um
thank you.
now I also wanted to ask, can you put like that kind of putting that emotions into your work, can you put that into context in any like specific work that you've done?
Well, you hear it in Hold Me Neighbor, for example, where I use the instruments from the region where I come from, for example. So that's one of the examples that's very literal. Antenne, my piece for chamber ensemble, choir, and Byzantine chanters,
Mm.
is another one. So wherever there is a sense of locality or sound that's deeply rooted in that place and um, that's familiar. These are the works, but I think Hold Me Neighbor and Antenne probably are the two best ones as examples. You mentioned My Desert, My Rose.
Mm.
In a way, yes, because the harmonic language and sometimes the rhythmic patterns are they do remind me of also the Balkans, but I didn't have it in mind to use it on purpose. Sometimes it comes through, even if you know, I mean, it's a part of who I am as a creator, so things come through.
Oh wow. And wh- when we played it at camp, they explained the piece as having inspiration from like like a video of a rose unfolding. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And can you tell me, I when I they didn't explain it that well, so I it's amazing that I can actually talk to you and ask what did that mean?
Well, I think they found their own explanation because actually never explained it as a rose.
Oh.
Uh, the title, the title, "My Desert, My Rose," is came from. It's more of a symbolic title that really speaks about spirituality rather than roses and deserts. But if a rose would represent something that's fragrant, beautiful, cultivated, uh, yeah, something that we want to see and have around and nurture, and give to somebody else, maybe. It's so something very beautiful. And then on the other side, there is the desert or a desert, a place that's barren, and we have to rely on ourselves. And the beauty that we see is more inside than outside. Although deserts are beautiful, I think, but just a place of a bareness and a place of uh, beauty in color, in scent, in form.
Hmm.
So those two juxtaposed, this is what I wanted the piece
Oh,
uh,
that makes a
to,
lot more
to,
sense.
to
Yeah.
stimulate that kind of thinking. So, so in the piece, everything starts as very open and improvised, basically. There are patterns that are suggested, but musicians, they choose their own tempo, the octave in which they play, even whether they play the whole pattern or just a segment of it.
Mm.
And they do it at their individual pacing, and they're supposed to listen to each other. They can't really follow the score. In most of the beginning is very open,
Mm.
and then as the piece progresses, things start to lock in. And
Mm.
as they lock in to such an extent that it's almost difficult to keep up because the tempo is fast, the
Yes.
metric changes are difficult. So, so in a way, this is again the juxtaposition of total freedom and then uh, total alignment of things. And for how long can we sustain anything that's so locked in and aligned,
Mm.
because the system wants to again be free and to explode. So, but I think parallel to a rose unfolding from the beginning and how the piece ends, there is a little bit of that. Those layers of aleatoric. I think they could be like
Yeah,
they
maybe. I mean,
unfolding in an organic way, like a flower would.
yeah,
So I mean,
perhaps.
I always like when musicians find explanations for the work,
Yeah,
because you see on how many levels it can actually make sense. So
yeah. I thought they were just reading an explanation that you had wrote, but perhaps they were actually making up their own explanation for the piece.
yeah, I think they found their own. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and it also sounded like that when they played it. They kind of made the beginning very like kind of one dimensional, and then at the end they made it very 3D, like a lot of using a lot of like arm movements to make this kind of 3D sound, like yeah.
I wish I could see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe
Did it
I'll
have a
ask
projection?
I'll ask if
Yeah.
I can get a recording. Yeah.
Did it have a projection of a flower or something?
They said that they watched this 8-minute video of a flower unfolding to kind of feel how it would feel to play the piece, which I thought was interesting.
Beautiful. Yeah.
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 Um,
It's really beautiful.
yeah.
Okay.
And now I kind of want to ask, um, so you said that you take experience, well, we already talked about how you take experiences from your home country, and your childhood experiences, to create music. And I'm wondering if any recent experiences influenced your music.
Oh, well, sometimes I realize after the fact that something influenced me. You know, that's also interesting. Not always in the moment, I know that this will be the inspiration. So I started to work, and as the piece is unfolding, I realized that actually it came from something else. So, you know, things like that happen.
Mm.
But here, I told you, this is not my regular living room or my studio. I took 2 weeks off to just be by myself and work. And since we tried to set the time and see how things would work, I thought, okay, this would be a beautiful way to take a break, you know, and speak with you. But I'm in this place on the coast, Adriatic coast. And I've been here several times, and there is a bridge here that's connecting two shores of a little windy lake, of a little windy lake. And when it's really windy, that bridge behaves like the Aeolian harp. It produces beautiful sounds
Oh,
that's all overtones.
oh wow.
And so I go for a walk because the wind picks up later in the afternoon. So before dinner, I take a walk, I go to the bridge. Sometimes I sit just by, it's a small bridge, you know, maybe like 40, no, maybe like 50 feet. It's very small, but the water is deep, so you can't really jump over or walk through. And I realized three nights ago, I realized that actually the sound of those overtones under the bridge, that this is how I will end the piece that I'm working on now. So
Mm,
this is as specific as it gets, because not only that, as I was working on the piece, I thought, oh, this is where I'm drawing it from. No, the actual sound of the bridge the other night uh, made me realize that this would be the perfect ending for the piece. So it can be very specific like that, but sometimes more often is not so specific. It's more the general experience that I feel changes me as a person or forms me as a person, and then that that person makes choices that only that person can make
mm,
because of those experiences. But those are not necessarily uh, experiences in music or sound,
mm.
like this one, the example that I just gave.
I see. That's a great example. And um now I want to ask also, when you write for kind of different, you write like operas, you write symphonic works, you write quartet pieces, and does your approach to writing each kind of vary? I would assume so, but how do you translate a certain emotion into an opera versus how you would translate a certain emotion into like a quartet piece?
Mhm. Well, with the opera, as with any work that has text, text is the driving force. So the emotion comes from the text. I read text a lot, and I try to really understand either the characters or the atmospheres. And then I think, how can the emotion be translated to sound so that the sound and the text either tell the same story or support each other in strange ways to tell the same story, even they might be doing different things.
Mm,
So text drives that. If I write a string quartet or any other piece of music that's not based in text, then I start from something that's my own internal question, observation, a problem to be solved. And I also realized that any like life problem, any situation that we need to deal with, if we see it as energy and as we break it down into elements, it can become like a very abstract structure for a possible work. And usually in pieces that are pure music, no text, I start from something like that.
Mm.
Because there you have the atmosphere, you have a sense of pacing, you have an idea how you want things to end. You know where the crisis is. You know what your like transparent or hopeful or beautiful moments are. So I try to keep it real. I mean, real for myself emotionally, and then it comes out as as a work of music that's hard to explain anyway. But at least in the process, things have meaning for.
Mm. Wow, I mean, that's beautiful that you can take this kind of hardship and then translate it into something hopeful. And I think that's like a the best part of being an artist is you can kind of have a healthy way of like releasing your frustrations and making it something really beautiful. And um I also wanted to ask, how do you think this can relate to like the present? Because there's a lot of hardship going on in the world right now, and I feel like you personally can relate with that. And how does I'm not sure how I thought of this question to go. But I just want to this the gist of my question is, how do you think like music in general, or your music, certain pieces of your music can kind of uplift society in that way?
Music is very powerful because I mean you know it. We whenever we're in a situation that's hard to cope with, what is the first thing you do? You grab a piece of music. You know, it doesn't have to be even our like concert classical music, a pop song that you like. This is how we console ourselves. You know, with music, and I always have that in mind that. Uh, that we have that amazing tool that can make people feel something, if not feel better, but at least they feel something. Because I think the amount of hardship that you're mentioning and all the terrible things that are happening in the world, they're very hurtful. But also because they're so hurtful, a lot of us also choose to close down, not to get hurt, which also means that or we numb ourselves so that we don't feel that pain of others,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes our own as well. And that's why the role of music is is huge, because it reminds us that we're human and that we have feelings, and that sometimes sadly there isn't much we can do. But if we're present with our humanness, that's already very helpful
Mm-hmm.
for ourselves, but especially for those who are in a more difficult situation than us, and they can see humanness when there is little humanness. So that's how I think of music as a big help in uh, healing and feeling human and connecting with others.
Yes, I agree. And now on a brighter note, I want to ask like, what are some concepts or kind of ideas, I guess, that you want to explore in the future?
Ooh, I tend to work with people uh, that I have that I develop long relationships. Let's put it that way. I like to work with people thinking that we will be working together for a long time. So working with people and learning how they play their instruments and what makes them really special on their own instrument, and then incorporating that into their part is what I find fascinating. So I think exploring that edge of how much music is specifically written and how much it's left to the performer, and how we agree on the language and notation that's going to bring the best out of them as performers and of what I imagined initially. This is something that really interests me.
Mm.
Also, the idea of uh, playing from visual scores. I mean, none of it is new. You know, things like that were done before, but I think for each of our personal journeys, I mean, some are newer than others, but I think it's more like what your personal journey is, and I think on my personal artistic journey at this point, it's the question of freedom and how our relationships through music can really make the best out of everybody who participates, and what we give to
Mhm.
one another as participants, but also to the audience. So I would say relationships and freedom. What is the those are the topics for me at the moment that interest me.
Beautiful. Well, I have one last question, and that is, what would you be if you weren't a composer?
Ha! I had a dream once in which uh, I was a flamenco dancer. So maybe I would be a flamenco dancer. That's from a dream. If I really think what I would like to be, I'd like to heal people, you know, be maybe a doctor, or maybe some uh yeah, a healer of some kind. But I think composers and musicians are healers.
Yes, for sure.
That's what we give to the world. So I think yeah, I think most likely then composer again, healer, but with music. You know?
Yes.
what
Well,
would you, what would you like to be if you're not a musician? Do you have another thought?
I I've tried to think of this so many times, and I failed to think of me doing like anything else. But like hmm, I thought of a few things. The first of all, the first thing was kind of um when I was 10 years old, I really liked K-pop, uh Korean pop, so I would like dance to it. So maybe I thought I would be a K-pop dancer. But I wouldn't actually do that in real life. And I've also thought of I'm not really sure. I think I would have to think about it a lot more.
Yeah, maybe you would be a musician again. Maybe that's
100%.
yeah,
100%.
yeah, yeah.
I think it's hard to think about doing anything else when you love something so much. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's all my questions. I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking a time out of your retreat to talk to me. And also, I wanted to say you were such a huge inspiration for all the young girls and all the young musicians. And we all look up to you so much. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation. And
Thank you.
good luck to you and to all of your friends. And we'll meet again.
Yes, I hope
Thank
so.
you so much.
Thank you so much and enjoy your retreat.
Thank you, Laurentia. Bye bye.
Bye bye.